Hey, Jillian, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
All right. Okay. The team is assembled. The two topics that I thought might be interesting to tackle today, which are actually questions that I'm posing to my own leadership team and myself, is, what, as Kidmin leaders, what is it that a Kidmin leader needs to do, right, on a regular basis? What are the core things that we should do? Because the thing we have to answer for ourselves is like, am I doing what needs to be done, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but frankly, for me, there just feels like there's 1,000 things you could do, right? Like it's like you could work on this, you could talk to this person, you could do all these things. And I know when, like, it's like rewind to when I first started as any of these roles. The first time I was a lead teacher, the first time I was a bus captain, the first time I was a children's pastor, it was always back to, it's like, well, what are the core things I need to do? So when I get to the end of the month, if I didn't do it, I'm like, okay, well, next month I'm going to do it, and I think that's the type of stuff that can help, one, for somebody who's already in these roles, to be able to kind of be a measuring stick for all of us. And I'm looking forward to getting to pick your brains, right? As you try to figure out, it's like, hey, what are some things that are just core to all leaders, right? And then what are some things where it's like, man, like this is a bus thing, doesn't really apply to Sunday school, etc. Right? So there's that topic. And the other one that's the really top of mind for me is talking shop about kid retention. It's like, what should happen, right? That there's so many angles we can come from that, right? Like it's like, what should happen with teachers, right? Are teachers on the hook at all on certain things that they should do to be following up with kids that show up to their class? What about bus workers, right? Like what amount of follow-up is the right amount of follow-up? Are people following up, right? Like what do they do when they follow up? So I want to get to talk shop on best practices there on that too, as we kind of formulate this. So I'm going to throw it to Jillian. I'll toss it at you here. Which of the two do you want to talk about first? What do you think we should talk about first?
Kid retention.
You want to talk kid retention first? All right, let's talk shop on kid retention first. Okay, so again, I'll throw this your way with, I'll let you actually moderate this topic, and you can chime in and then you can ask us what we think on that. But like, it's like there's a couple venues to talk about, right? Like one is when a bus team is out there, they're finding new kids, but they've already found some kids too. How, what should we do to follow up? What's the right blend of following up where it's not hampering to the point where they're not finding new people? I definitely remember a phase in, Blue Bomber Crew land where that was exactly what was happening. Like it's like we're just like constantly trying to just keep the kids we have, because I would call it follow-up addiction, where the team feels like, oh, I went and I knocked the 15, 20, 25 doors of all the kids that keep coming, and I had a great Saturday. It's like, you found no new kids, right? Like stuff like that. But you're like, box checked. I had a great Saturday, and it doesn't grow, right? But then if you don't do any follow-up, right, like how do you do that, right? So that's the bus side. Then there's the Sunday school side of the house, right? What do the teachers do? Do they write cards? Do they not do that? Do they call? Do they? So go ahead, Jillian. I'll let you kind of moderate this and pick our brains and throw in your thoughts.
Since you're throwing it at me, I'm going to throw it at you with the starters. Okay. In December, I was out at San Jose. I had outreach with your team, bus outreach. And the thing that I thought was so cool that you guys did was you had a specific number. The team said, we have this number of doors we're going to knock, and I'll follow up. But then we're going to knock 5 new doors. We're going to try to reach 5 new people. And did that stem from your follow-up addiction, per se?
Yeah, it did. It was just kind of like a fail-safe to make sure that people know it's like, hey, like we call it outreach, right? So we need to actually reach out, to new people, right? So yeah, that's totally exactly where that came from. We've done a couple other things that we've tried out since then, but I'm so curious to get your thoughts as well on that. And if you want me to chime in on some of the other things we've done, I'm happy to chime in on that too. I just don't want to like hog the conversation. So
Yeah. Philip, how do you guys do your follow-up? Regarding bus first, I think, because bus is where we're actually reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's kind of like a fascinating topic.
Yeah, the idea of outreach is just what James said. You're reaching outside of your existing group. We don't even, at least I personally, I don't call it outreach until I've hit a new door, or at least a door with kids that aren't coming. At that point, it's just follow up, which is vital. I mean, you have to follow up, but that's not outreach yet.
Yeah.
So what we try to tell our team is hit your regulars first, and then pick a new spot. Like, okay, if we have a street that's maybe on the slide, maybe we're losing kids, that's going to be our focus. After we hit all of our regulars, we're going to go blitz this street. We're just going to hit every single door on this street, whatever we have to do to generate some excitement here.
Mm-hmm.
But every Saturday, we try to hit new doors. We don't necessarily put a number to say we're going to do this many new doors, but there's definitely time allotted for that. There's some Saturdays where you're lucky just to get on the street and hit your regulars, or you're just happy to follow up. But if that's your normal, that's not good.
Yeah.
Our team, we're working on setting up our follow-up. Our bus ministry is newer than Philip and James. So for us right now, we hit the same neighborhood. We go around, and personally, what I do is I go and I knock on the kids' doors that I see frequently. But it seems that when we're in these neighborhoods, we run into kids outside. So every time we walk into the neighborhood, there's tons of kids outside. So I'm actively doing outreach as I'm walking from door to door. But follow-up, when you're doing follow-up, what do you consider doing follow-up? Are you guys talking to the kids and saying, how has your week been? Are you following up on things you know about the kids and kind of getting to know them? Or what do you consider follow-up?
On our side, it's making sure that they're coming for this coming week. And of course, you give more than that, in your conversation, you try to check on them, how you guys doing, whatever, the small talk. But the biggest thing is, are you coming this Sunday? And especially if they missed last Sunday, I want to know why. Hey, is it something, that it was unavoidable? Is there a reason? Maybe you overslept, or maybe it's something more serious. You never know. But we try to make sure that every kid that has ever come on our bus gets knocked on their door until they either move or we know they're never coming back.
That's good. Yeah. So with us, for a long time we did that too. What we've shifted to now is I actually encourage my team to phone follow up. And that's been kind of an interesting journey, to be totally honest. Because here's the worry. What I find is, like the level of diligence of when people are calling, it's like, oh, I missed them. But frankly, sometimes I'd see that happen on Saturdays too. It's like, oh, somebody's at the flea market and then they didn't catch the kid, right? And they're not showing up on Sunday or whatever. So we've tried to kind of layer that. Like what we're doing now is a rule of thumb is you call the kid Thursday night and you're like, hey, you coming Sunday. If you don't catch them Thursday night, you call them Friday. If you don't catch them Friday, you visit them Saturday, right? If you catch them before then and they're like, yeah, I'm coming, then you don't even have to follow up on Saturday, right? Then you can like reallocate your time, right? We're trying to do that. Not everybody is diligent on that yet, but that's kind of one of the things we're trying to do because one of the questions I was trying to answer is how to break follow-up addiction, because it's a two-way addiction, right? To spell it out some more, because what's interesting is some of these kids, they have been coming like 8 or 9 plus years, right? And they almost get used to somebody's going to talk to me Saturday or I'm not showing up Sunday. And that's actually kind of a weird trend over time, right? Because I mean, how weird would that be, right? Like if the three of us were going to church together and I'm like calling you up on a Saturday night, Jillian, hi, are you coming to church? It's like, are you what? Yeah, that's kind of insulting, right? Like it's like, so that's the stuff where I'm trying to force that type of attitude, right? Where it's like coaching my team to be like, no, you should kid around with the kids. It's like, I shouldn't even have to call you. This is your church now, right? Like, why am I even calling you? I'll see you tomorrow, right? And like keep pushing that until you go from I have to go to your door and you show up to I call you and you show up to I don't even have to call you anymore and you're going to show up. But it's like it's a process. And the thing that I find really hard is making sure that nobody gets lost, as we go through those transitions. And that phone part in the middle is this kind of scary valley right now, but that's what we're trying right now, and I think that's the thing. The hard thing for me to track right now is the level of diligence of the team and how to know who is falling off. That's like the paperworky part of it, right? To kind of track that stuff. We do okay at it. But I think that's, for us, we feel like that's really important for the future because, it's a whole lot faster to dial than it is to walk, right? And we can save the walking for the kids that really, really need it. Right. And kind of go to there like it's like a maturing continuum type of thing. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. What about, yeah. Go ahead, Jillian. I was going to ask you, like, it's like, what are your thoughts on this? Chime in on this.
Well, I'm still developing the whole follow-up thing. Right now, I'm kind of trying to get to know the kids because I feel that in the area I'm in, I feel like there's a lot of neglect. And I know that's across the board. We come across that all the time. But I feel like there is a lot of neglect. I'll find these kids outside. There's not an adult in sight. They're not getting a lot of attention. So when I'm following up, I'm not necessarily saying, are you coming to church? Because we do that with our wake-up crew. So when we go out on Sunday morning, we are saying, hey, are you coming this morning? Are you ready? I'm at the church and people are knocking on the door. Pardon me.
Getting a tour. We're getting a tour.
We are indeed.
Yeah. Part of the webinar is answering the door. Yes. But so the follow-up for me is just, hey, how's your week going? How's school? Are you excited vacation's coming? So our follow-up is more geared towards kind of getting to know them rather than saying, are you coming to church? Yeah. And we save that for Sunday morning.
On the
Sunday morning, run out the doors.
I'm sorry. On the retention topic, are we talking about the follow-up, getting him to the next Sunday, or are we talking about like more permanent retention, Brother James, like stuff we've discussed? Like, how do you get them where they're no longer even considered a bus kid, where they're now a church kid, where they're just one of us, even though they get to the church on the bus? There's no longer a distinction. In fact, I don't even like the title anymore. I don't like bus kids, church kids.
Yeah.
We got kids that baptized, they got the Holy Ghost, and as far as I'm concerned, they're saved as any as any of our kids that come in a car. Yeah. So at that point, my challenge and something we're really working through is the integration now. Now, how do we make them a permanent part where they don't even think about, I am going to your church. Now they're going to their church. Yep. So something that we're really working on, and we don't have this figured out by any means, but including them in youth activities. We have Monday night basketball, pick them up, bring them to that. Like I mentioned, youth events, picking them up for church, of course, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights. This isn't just a Sunday morning thing. Yeah. Just tying them in, man, where they're not strangers. I love seeing them. We just had this Sunday night. Saw a boy that just got baptized, and he's on the front row with 5 or 6 of his buddies that are now church kids. I mean, they were like tight, elbowing each other and telling jokes. They're friends, they're buddies, and that's the way it should be. Yeah. And now we just got to do that on a more widespread basis. We don't have it figured out, but man, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, this is a multifaceted problem. I think I agree with you, right? Like the two, if I were to like draw out an illustration of how to map this out, right? Like it's like there's two portions of it, and then you could split up that stuff into two portions as well. Like the first portion is how do you just make sure that the new kids you find, they are not necessarily acclimated yet, and they're not faithful, right? That's kind of the first step before you even make them like, jump to that next step of church kid, right? So to speak. How do we just make sure that we can nurture if they have any desire to stay, right? If that we've got the net in place, we're trawling these children there, right? That we can do that meticulously and faithfully enough that if they show up, that we've got things in place so that they're going to get calls. They're going to be followed up with. They're going to be like, they're not just going to like ninja vanish, right? Like because somebody forgot, right? Like it's like if you can do that, and that's kind of the stuff that I'm curious on. Like it's like, hey, the three of us brainstorming, and anything else anyone else wants to chime in. And I was like, what's the ideal look like, right? Like it's like, okay, like somebody doesn't show up for a week, that they get a card from us, and that they get a phone call or other things like that. Like what's or whatever, right? And then there's that whole other half, like all the kids that are faithful. I think, like you're saying, that's a big part where there are plenty of churches that might have gotten to the point where they do awesome things to retain a bunch of kids, and they may not get them to the next step where all they are now is they're riders. They're very faithful riders, but that doesn't mean they've made the jump to become a church kid, right? And so it's like, the distinction in my mind is like, my goal is I want to take all these kids that are riding the bus and make them church kids that happen to just get here by the bus, right? Like it's like that's kind of the end goal. But I still feel like, hey, the reality of it is that I don't know necessarily how secure my net is, right? Being good stewards and fishers of men here, right? And children being these tiny men and women, right? How do I know that this stuff isn't sliding through, right? Like what's the best way to, it's like, hey, like, like in my mind, if these things were happening, I feel good, right? That if we did that, that's our best effort, and defining that together, right? Because that's the stuff that I was mentioning to you. Like I'm seeing good things happen. And what I'm trying to measure now is it happening consistently? And also like just like defining it. So I've defined it like one pass, but I feel like we can be so much better at it. We miss you cards and stuff like that. But I want to kind of pick your brains, right? Like what is the ideal in your mind, right? Like it's like, for example, Philip, right? Like, okay, so a kid shows up, you guys do a big candy rain and you do some balloon animals and you have 5 new kids show up. Yes, awesome, right? And then, that multiplied out times a couple streets, and you have, 10, 15, 20 new kids. But 10 of them don't show up the following week. What happens, right? And what more than that, really, what is the ideal, whether it's happening or not? Like if you could dream of an ideal, right? What could happen? My thought is it's just like, hey, we could just dream together a little bit, because there's stuff where I think I need to do a little more dreaming on this, right? And that we can throw out some ideals, right? So if you were to answer that question, Philip, right? Like it's like, what would happen, right? Like over a month, right? Like let's say a kid, they show up, you got their name, you got their address, you know who they are, and then they didn't show up the next week. Like what would you ideally want your team to do?
Well, the ideal is, again, we're dreaming. We have missed you cards and all that, but I've found that the missed you cards very seldom make it by mail to their houses because their address is incomplete. The kids don't even know their addresses. They don't even know their own last names. They don't know how old they are. They don't know their birthday. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
So the odds of it mailing to them is about 0.
Yep.
So the phone call thing you mentioned, I like that idea, but man, maybe you guys have different in San Jose, but our phone numbers don't work. Like we call them and they're disconnected. I mean, their cell phones revolve on a daily basis, it seems like.
Yeah.
And there's
ours. Yeah.
I'm sure it's a job. So in a perfect world, we'd call them.
Yeah.
They'd get a missed you card.
Yeah.
And ideally a body, because they weren't there. I mean, that would be the ideal. Practically, what we do is a knock on the door and just check in with them. And if they don't answer, we leave a flyer for them. Ideally, we leave the missed you card. That's the only way we were able to get the missed you cards to them is by physically putting it on their front door. So that's what's worked for us. But in a perfect world, a body would be able to talk to and find out why they didn't come back.
Yeah. Well, so let me toss this out, right? Like the typical problem that I find is, we're doing weekly outreach, and then we found a kid because they happen to be home during a certain time, and then now the season has changed, right? We found them in the spring, and now it's summer, and they are always at the flea market on Saturdays now. Or suddenly they've started playing soccer on Saturdays, or they go to visit cousins, but they are home on Sunday. We just don't have to be able to catch them anymore, right? And that's where the wheels sometimes fall off, right? Like if I find I'm asking my team, it's like, hey, what happened to this kid? Oh, well, we just haven't seen him in a while. And it's like, okay, well, how can we be more clever about that, right? I've made some recommendations. I'm like, hey, well, how about you pick another night? Like it's like the full Wednesday night service. Just like swing over there and see if you catch them, right? And just, hey, what's up? We miss you. Same thing with what you were saying. I actually don't trust mailing we miss you cards. They're just a way to write a note and shove it in their door. So we have our team hand deliver that stuff too. It's just more often than not, a lot of times what we find is we found a kid once, and then all of a sudden, they're not necessarily there on Saturdays at the times that we go, and the We Miss You card is the only way to get to them. So one is the team faithfully doing the Miss You cards, right? And then that comes down to all kinds of stuff like, if they're new team members, do they even know they exist? And we're trying to make sure they're trained. Do they have them in their binders at the time? Did they bring their binders, right? So we're always like checking, do you have your binder with you? Do you have your stuff? Is it equipped? And all that type of stuff. So in the ideal, they have it in their binder. They brought their binder on Saturday or Thursday or whenever we're going out and outreach. And if a kid wasn't there, that they're cognizant enough of that they're going to go ahead and knock. And if they don't get to physically talk to the kid, that they write a quick card. Hey, didn't see you last Sunday. Really miss you. Looking forward to seeing you. Hey, here's my number. Like, give me a call. Let me know what's up. How you doing. Really looking forward to seeing you again Sunday. I'll see you Sunday morning, right? And then they drop the card right in the door, right? Is there anything else you guys think would be like the ideal for what to do the next week? And because the next part of this conversation is, how about Sunday school, right? Like it's like, is Sunday school part of the equation too? Like what should they do, right? Like it should be an everybody net type of thing. But let's just start with Bust, right? Like any other thoughts, Jillian or Philip, on this?
I feel like you guys covered it. Like I agree, that hand delivered note, that face-to-face contact. I love that you guys do the notes. I'm so going to have to do that because I remember being a kid, and when I got a card, it was so special because, wow, they thought of me. They wrote me a card. When I first came to the Rock Church, I got a card in the mailbox, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm just lame, but it was icing on the cake for me. They sent me a card. So I love that you guys do the cards. I think that's great. Not sure why that never crossed my mind.
Well, that's something we're definitely not good enough on. We're definitely, we have a lot of ideas and not all of them are fully implemented. So that's one of them that we need to take to the next level. In fact, I was from my my perspective, I was trying to generate the missed you cards and hand them out to all the captains and say, okay, this is who's missed. Now go hand them out. But they weren't all connecting, and I was getting them back. And I really think maybe I was micromanaging too much. Maybe I should just step away and say, okay, write your own thank you cards. You determine who needs them instead of me doing that. And I think that'd be better. I don't think I have any of mine.
Yeah, so this is what ours look like. Here's another style of ours, and we have a new one that I don't have on me, and it's got like our new Vans on it. So there's two examples to kind of give you an idea if you don't have We Miss You cards of just kind of like what we do. And on the back of ours, like my children's ministry, we call it Ignition Kids because we're igniting potential in children from toddlers to teens, right? And so it's a little spark plug, and it's there, and you write your message there. If you want to actually mail it, you can go ahead and do that, Delio. Return address, blah, 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 right? So that's that.
Here's my terrible way of doing this. There's our missed you card.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm actually holding a screen in front of this. That's pathetic. That's all I could come up with.
That's actually pretty awesome, Philip. That's true dedication. You brought your entire screen over just to make sure the audience got to see you.
Because I care. My wife thinks that picture on that missed you card is horrible, but I quite like it.
No, I think that's hilarious. It's hard not to get a chuckle out of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out a random idea here. I'm looking in my box and I realize I still have these. Speaking of, stuff that you like half implement, everybody does that, right? So for me, this was an idea I did like a long time ago, and it's a copying good card. So I don't even remember where I got this from at this point. But the idea is, you've been caught being good, and it's like says all that stuff, and it was like points from my store. So like, we used to do like tons of points, like 1,000 points would really be worth more like $1, and everything would be worth like heinous amounts of points, like all Chuck E. Cheese style, right? So we used to do that, and like kids would be like, oh yeah, it's like 50,000 points, and they realized it's like everything's worth like 5,000-10,000 points, so you actually get like 10 things, right? But it still felt kind of cool when they wrote see their name in 10,000 points. Like that kind of stuff. So just throwing that out there since I see it in my box. But yes, back to retention. So Jillian, where do you want to take us next in this conversation?
Definitely Sunday school, because in the Sunday school room, it's not all kids that are at the church. It's not all kids that come on the bus. You also have those new families that are coming in and bringing their kids, and that's a whole different element. And I think it's a special element because usually those are the ones that it's a whole family that's coming together. It's not just the parents sending their kid. So when you're following up with them and you're retaining them, you're retaining a whole family. So how do you guys go about that? Do you allow it to be the follow-up with just the parents, or do you reach out to the kid as well?
Yes, let's start with the venerable Philip Booker.
I am going to be very honest here. I was reading something on my phone when you asked the question. So,
Julian, please restate the question.
So, James, I'm so bad. I'm sorry. I'm listening now. I promise.
Yeah.
I'm focused.
How do you go about?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. How do you go about following up with those children that come with their family, that visiting family? Do you allow, the church follow-up team, or however your church does it, to follow up with the parents? Or do you also make that additional effort of reaching out to those children as well?
If they come on the bus, I see that's the bus's responsibility to follow up with them. If they come and their parents are in there, maybe this isn't the best way, but we typically would let the church follow-up team do that. Maybe that's not the best, but that's what we've done. So there's the inside of our card for what it's worth.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
The empty chair. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to admit something. I was like fiddling around with my headphones. So all I heard was, and that's what we've done. And so
I'm so happy right now. That makes me really feel better. Thank you. Basically, if they come through the church, their parents go there. We typically let the church follow up with them, unless they've come on the bus, and then that's our responsibility.
Got it.
Whether it's right or wrong, that's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here's, like if we were to dream a dream here about what the ideal could be in Sunday school, my thought is this. The way we do it is like Bus and Sunday School are very transparently sharing information about these kids. And the Sunday School team, when Bus gathers phone numbers, we'll give those out to the Sunday School teachers too. And, I've talked in the past about how my class is organized, where we'll have a structure where for every 10 kids, we have one group leader, and that's actually separate from the Sunday School teachers. So I'll give you an example. In a class of 20 kids, we'll actually have 3 teachers and 2 group leaders. If you can muster the manpower, it's awesome. If you can't, maybe you have less teachers. Teachers are like the limiting factor here. That's the harder thing to really accomplish for teacher training and, people that are passionate about that and all those other things. But there's actually a ton of people that love working with kids that just actually don't want the responsibility of teaching, right? So we found that to be an interesting formula. And basically, what I encourage my group leaders on is it's like, hey, like if you got 10 or less kids, they're your babies. If you don't see them the next week, call them, right? You have their numbers just like Bus does, or you both don't have their numbers, and our Sunday school teachers are expected at least once a month to come out and outreach as well. Then follow up with these kids. Follow up with all these kids, whether they came or didn't come or whatever, and just once a month show your face to everybody, right? If you're just visiting 10, 15 kids, it's not that bad, like the main focus of the group leaders is it's like these are your babies, right? Like the question I try to answer is it's like is it possible, right? Like in my ideal, in my mind, any kid that shows up, if they ever stopped, that minimum 2 people are very bothered about that, right? Minimum, right? Which would be the group leader and the bus worker that this kid was on their street route, right? So that's kind of the fail-safe that I feel like isn't necessarily fully that safe yet, but I'm trying to fine-tune it, right? So that's my thought there, right? And then I think organizing it in an ideal, I would love that teachers are not off the hook either, and that every teacher has to pair up with at least one group leader and take on kids as well, right? Like that they tag team and be like, hey, like this, one of my kids stopped coming. That, for me, I want my group leaders to be advocates for these kids. It's like, hey, one of my babies stopped coming. Somebody else needs to call this kid with me, right? And then another teacher will be like, oh, cool, okay, I'll do it, right? So it's like really clear accountability. And then, what just happened there, right? Then minimum 3 people are calling this kid, right? If the street bus worker pulls in the captain, then you got 4 people calling this kid, right? That's the type of stuff that I'm trying to think through. It's like, how do I know? It's like, man, if 4 people call this kid and they don't want to come, right? And we do it for a couple weeks, they must really not like us, like, is it something we said? Is it like the way our faces are? Like, what's up? But otherwise, like I'm trying to think through for me, like how to architect more assurance, right? That it's like these kids aren't going to fall through the cracks. Like I pose it to my team like this. It's like, hey, last night, one of the things my pastor was talking about was he's like, like it's like God's not going to bless you with $1 million. I don't know exactly how he said it, but I'm going to summarize it like this, right? God's not going to bless you with $1 million if you can't even handle 100, right? Like because your habits aren't going to automatically change the more you have, right? So the thing that I'm always challenging my team with is it's like, hey, if I'm God and I'm looking down, can I trust you with my souls, right? Like, because this is his revival, this is his harvest. Or are we a leaky sieve, right? If I were God, that would freak me out, just straight up, right? So I'm always challenging my team with exactly that. Like, it's like, can God trust us, right? Or do these kids constantly flow through? and just being real, right? Like in some groups on my team, I feel like, oh yeah, God sends a kid there, they're not going anywhere. They will stay unless they just don't want this, right? And that's a really good feeling because there's some kids that just don't, right? The only time I ever see them in the year is for VBS and for our cotton candy Sundays and stuff like that, and then that's it. They're never here, right? Okay, that's okay. Come enjoy the stuff. But we want to know that if a kid actually is interested, they will stay, right? So
yeah. Well, part of that retention that we really haven't talked about. I mean, we all have an understanding of it, but you make it a lot of fun. I mean, you speak their language, right? I mean, that's part of retaining them is making it something where if they missed it, they missed out on something really cool.
I agree. Yeah.
From the bus ride to the classroom. And we've talked about this too, James. The bus ride's got to be part of the experience. If you're not having fun on the bus, in fact, if it's miserable, it's hot and sticky and people are picking on you and you're not having fun, they may not want to come just because of that experience, no matter how good the classroom is. Or vice versa. If the bus ride is a blast and classroom's a dud, they may come just for the bus ride, So we try to make at least one of the two so amazing that they're going to come back. Ideally, both. But that's the best retention is just make it awesome.
Yeah. Jillian, you wanted to say something. I'll definitely chime in after. But what are you thinking? Oh, did you freeze? Okay, there you go. Jillian, go ahead. You wanted to say something. I could tell.
Oh no, Jillian, come back.
Jillian. Oh, suddenly you muted. Oh, get out.
Do you know sign language?
My wife is actually a sign language interpreter. I may have to. Oh, she's out right now, so we're in trouble. Okay, well, let's see if she automatically comes back in a minute. But what I was going to say is this: I like chiming in on what you were saying, Philip. One of the goals for my team is I challenge my Sunday school teachers with, their goal is to make their experience so incredible that even if bus team didn't exist, that kids in their class would invite their friends, that Sunday school would grow just because of Sunday school, right? So that's kind of the bar that I try to set. And that goes back to I like putting rules of thumb out for my team. It's like, hey, if you do like these kind of things, then we know that we're providing a good experience. If we don't, then at least we know where we stand. So I don't know if you guys have some rules of thumb like that you've thrown out for your teams. If you do, I'm happy to share mine. If you guys, I just want to see what you guys have there too. If you have some thoughts.
Are you alive yet, Jillian? Oh.
Yeah. I wonder how that happened. You must have knocked your microphone somehow or something.
We heard a vague sound. Yell. Just scream as loud as you can.
Oh no. That is so random.
Gotta love technology.
Yeah. Jillian, maybe try to hop out and hop back, and Philip and I will continue this, and then we'll let you hop back in when you do. So give it a shot. Okay, so yeah, Philip, what are your thoughts?
So you mentioned the rules of thumb. What exactly are you referring to? You're talking about ideals, like if you were to have the ideal classroom. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, let me give you an example, right? So for my Sunday school teachers, I tell them, hey, once a month, I want us all to measure ourselves on how we think we did this month, right? Individually, and then as a team, right? If you, I actually have, I think I've shown you kind of my little thing where they can color in up to 10 blocks for fun and equipping and engaging, right? So it's hey, if you did an object lesson, give yourself 5 out of 10 points because an object lesson is that important, right? If you did If you did a game in your class, when you taught, right, give yourself 5 points. If you do X, Y, Z, give yourself 2 points or whatever. Because in my mind, it's like, hey, if you can walk away saying, I know I put my heart into doing an object lesson and I did a game in the class, that's a pretty good class. If every teacher is able to get to 10 points every single month, that makes me feel wonderful, And if they don't, I want them to know it's like, hey, the bar is higher than that. Come on, we got this. Right. So, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, our classroom setting is a little bit different right now. We did a mix-up where we combined some classrooms, and we kind of are able to I hate to use this term, but to force those things to happen by assigning people to the object lesson, by assigning people to the game, assigning people to the skit, so we can make sure that those things happen. Now, the quality of those is, of course, up to the people that do them. So that's open to interpretation, of course. But you can tell, the level of effort. I can't say I have a specific rule of thumb for how much effort you put into your portion of the lesson. But if I were to go to the bus, there are some things that a great bus worker will do. First of all, they're not going to just sit. They're going to be moving about the bus. They're going to be interacting with the kids, carrying on conversations, getting on and off the bus when the kids get on and off the bus. Not everybody can do that, but at least, you care enough about the kids to jump off and be so enthusiastic when you see them on the sidewalk. You can't even wait for them to get on the bus. You're just excited. When they get on, you're talking to them. You're making them balloon animals, doing magic tricks, anything at all to show them that they really are that important to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the idea is to work the bus, not ride the bus.
I like that.
That's the idea of a bus worker. So I can't say that I have a list written to say these are the things that an ideal bus worker would do, but I probably should. I like the way you go about that. At our meeting, say, hey, these are the expected. If you're not at least trying, I feel like maybe you're not giving it everything you got.
Yeah, my thought was that, especially, we had a surge of a bunch of new people a few months ago, and the hardest thing was to really clearly set expectations. And so that's what really drove this. So as I mentioned to you, for Sunday school, the way I measure them is that their experience with their kids is fun, engaging, and equipping. But with us, it's fun, nurturing, and consistent, right? So the way I did it with the bus team was I told them, like, hey, there's two major interactions that you have with these kids every week. It's outreach, which is your Saturday or your Thursday, and it is your Sunday experience that you give them, right, when they get on the bus and get off the bus. So everything we're going to measure on is based off of those two things over and over again, right? Like what happens before Sunday and what happens on Sunday. So for example, with fun, for every week that they on Saturday do something fun in their outreach, if they did a candy rain, if they went out there making balloon animals, if they did like a little parade where they did something unique that was different from I just knocked some doors, give themselves a point. If they did it every single week consistently, they give themselves an extra point, right, for the whole month, and they get 5 points out of 10. And then for the Sunday experience, if at their bus stops they played games, right, or they played a game in the van on the way there, then they give themselves a point for every week they did that. And if they did it the entire month, they give themselves an extra point, and they get another 5 out of 10. If they do both, they get 10 out of 10, right? And then you're hitting, that's, the most we can ask of you, right? At least at that base level. You do that, that's a pretty fun experience by anybody's measure, right? You don't do that, then it might be a fun experience, but it's a gamble, right? So with nurturing, my measure was, do you call your kids? If you do, right, every week that you call all the kids that you need to call, give yourself a point. If you do it all month, give yourself that extra point, right? And then on Sunday, do you connect with at least 3 kids on Sunday? Like genuinely connect. You had a conversation and you feel like you made them feel that by the end of the conversation that it's like, hey, they know my name and I actually mattered, right? And that's not hard, right? Like just a few minutes of that, that's all I'm expecting, right? And I told them, it's like, hey, like that's actually not an unfair expectation because at the bus stop, you can be talking to these kids. On the ride there, you can be talking to these kids. In the gym, you can be talking to these kids. While we're waiting for service to start, you can be talking to these kids. While you're picking them up from class, you can talk to these kids. While they're going home, you can talk to these kids, right? Like, so there's at least 5 or 6 different times that you can be talking to kids and having micro conversations. And that's really all I'm looking for. Something where you said their name, you really connected with them, and hey, how you doing? You're doing good. I'm so glad you're here, right? You do that every single week that you do that, connect with at least 3 kids, you give yourself a point. You do that the whole month, you give yourself a consistency bonus of 1 more point. That's how you get from, to 10 out of 10, right? And the last one, consistency is, I did that more on like the spiritual side. So it's like, hey, if you're spiritually consistent, then give yourself 10 out of 10 points. And how I wanted that measured was specifically, if you pray, if you can say that you prayed genuinely at least 30 minutes, 5 out of 7 days of the week, give yourself a point for every single week that you can say you genuinely did that, right? And of course, consistency, extra point if you did it all month. And then if you are on time, or at least on time, if not early, to prayer before outreach, give yourself a point for every week that you do that, and then give yourself a bonus point if you did it consistently all month, and that's how you get to 10 points. Right? So that's how my bus team measures themselves, and sometimes it's a rude awakening. Like, oh, hey, wow,
Yeah.
Right? Same thing in Sunday school. I have kind of similar metrics on that. But I tried to kind of work backwards. It's like, what's my ideal, right? And those were some of the things I was finding, that it's like, I drive around and we're just all human, right? Like, it's like, I've been a bus worker, I've been a bus captain, I've been all of these things. I get it. There's times where it's like, it's easier to be like scrolling Instagram than talking to a kid at a bus stop, or like you're just like doing stuff, right? So those were kind of things where I thought, hey, like this is kind of the bread and butter, that if we're measuring ourselves by this, like it'll get us somewhere. So
yeah. This doesn't really fit into this particular subject, but Jillian mentioned something when she was on about active outreach. I've seen people on outreach literally walk past kids, walk past adults because they're not behind doors, where they almost ignore the people around them because they're so focused on what they're supposed to be doing. And it's like these blinders, like we walk past prospective people. And Jillian said it so good. There's nothing like randomly everybody you meet. I don't care if it's the guy emptying the trash on the street. If they're alive, I'm going to try to talk to them.
Yeah.
I loved that active outreach that you mentioned. And that's so, so good. If every bus worker did that, man, I can only imagine the connections that would be made.
I'm with you on that. And it sounds like we can hear Jillian again, which is very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just toss in this quickly. I definitely want to get to hear from Jillian, but what you hit on was like exactly a lot of my motivation of why I wanted to like crystallize and articulate kind of what I thought like the minimum was, right? Like, it's like, this is the expectation. This is who we are, right? We do these things, and this is the bar. Because I think it can be easy. We get numb. It's really easy to get numb. Like you're just like, okay, I'm here every single week. I'm here every single Saturday and stuff like that. And that's just life. That's just, like, that's just how it is. It can happen. And we can get into box checking mode. Like, same thing, even with what we were talking about earlier, Jillian, where it's like, hey, like, you did your follow-up, you did your outreach, and you reached at least 5 people, right? That's just a little thing that is a gut check. But even that, we can still become like robotic, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I knocked my 5 doors. And exactly like you're saying, Philip, like it's like there was a whole crowd of kids. Like, I know they're not a door, but talk to them, right? And it happens, right? Like, because we go into box checking mode and we're already thinking about, oh man, I can't wait for this burrito. I'm going to have it a little bit, like, because it's just like, it's the monotony, right? That goes to that whole other thing that I wanted to talk about. We're not going to have time for tonight, but it's like, what do leaders do, right? Like, what's the main function of a leader? Because I found that a lot of times when I bring new leaders on board, like they're trying to navigate that. They're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to be like chief administrator? Do I like, do I just like yell from the hill? Like, what do I, like what's expected of me? Right. So I feel like that's the whole fun topic in itself.
It is.
But Jillian, welcome back. Tell us your thoughts. We want to know.
So when we were talking about the retention and the follow-up, and you mentioned the team leaders, and I remember last year when I was getting ready for VBS, and you told me about the team leaders. Well, this year in planning my VBS, I felt that my biggest failure last year in VBS was in retention and follow-up. I feel that I completely just neglected it. So something I did this year is I definitely don't use team leaders in Sunday school, but for VBS, I made sure there's more team leaders, and I had them all sign a contract that they are responsible to follow up with their teams. So I have 2 team leaders for every 10 kids, and I told them, like, the first week they have to go visit them face-to-face, and after that, every other week, face-to-face, a phone call. But I want to see retention from that big event. I think it's a sad thing that we get these kids in for the event, but then we don't get to see them in Sunday school afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get some safety nets and keep these kids,
Yeah, I'm with you.
I like your team leader aspect of it, giving them that chance to be responsible and to take responsibility for those souls, to own them.
Man, if I had to pick one characteristic for the ideal team leader, I don't care if they're enthusiastic, creative, whatever. If you have to pick one, for me, it's someone that, far from trying to do as little as possible to get by and still be a part of the team, where they're literally looking for things they can do to help out, and not just asking you, hey, what can I do? What can I do? But actually finding them on their own and doing them without even asking, just seeing something that needs done and doing it. Instead of that, well, it's just, I mean, if the one characteristic is just getting involved without someone pointing you in that direction and just doing it, just having that raw passion and just doing stuff. I don't care how good you are at it, just do it, and I know that that's a very vague concept. Like, how do you teach that? I don't even know. I don't have any idea, but there's certain people that I know who I'm going to call. I'm going to call the ones that are not only going to do exactly what I point them at, they're going to do everything in sight while they're there.
Yeah.
How do you teach that? I don't know, but
Really can't get upset. Like, even if they make a mess of it, if somebody goes out and they're just all for it and they just carry that burden and they have that vision, maybe they'll make you want to pull your hair out because they're doing craziness, but they're reaching. And I love those go-getters, those people that just, they don't care what it takes. They're going to go out on their own, on their day off. It doesn't have to be a Saturday. They're going to reach. That makes me excited when I see those people. But I don't think it is taught. It's either it's a visionary person. It's somebody who just has a burden to see these kids saved, or in whatever their burden is. It can be in any ministry. But yeah, you pointing that out, just those go-getters, that's not taught, I don't think.
Anyway. I agree. Here's a little tangent I'm going to throw in with that, which is something I find really interesting in ministry is the type of people that start like that may not make it to the end like that. I think the biggest downfall for somebody who is a spitfire and isn't able to keep that is, just frankly, somehow they get offended, when a leader's trying to be like, hey, like, that is such a good idea. We just can't do it right now,
That's
and
good.
it's such a fascinating kind of like, the longer I'm in ministry, the more I realize, like, it's like, wow, is that what it was like for Pastor to talk to me about this idea I was so fired up about? And then I find now, like, in the long view, there are so many things I wanted to do. I didn't get to do them right away, but I've still got to do them now. Like, I've got to do way more than I ever expected to get to do. But that first year or two, I was so frustrated because I had like 50 ideas and I wanted to do them all. And he's just like, hold on, champ. Like, there's some bread and butter things you got to take care of right now. And I hated that, like, because I get fired up pretty easy. And I think the thing that I struggled with the most was like feeling kind of hurt about it. And it's like, you don't like my idea? And it's like because you love it so much and you are so passionate about it that it feels almost personal. And I think like, just throwing it out there, I think that to myself too when I work with a Spitfire, that it's like, I try to tell them, it's like, hey, like, even though I'm telling you not right now on some of these things, please don't forget that it's like there's 100 things that you can do, even though I might not be letting you say go with this one idea. And that's what I feel like I really needed to hear when I was starting out as a leader, because I can tell you there were times where I just felt like I meet with my pastor and now I laugh about it because I am on the other side of the table sometimes in these conversations, but I walk out of his office and I'm like, dream smasher, right? It's like, oh, how could you? This is a wonderful idea. Thousands of souls will be saved from this. Why are we not doing, and it's just like, and then I see now that there's an ebb and flow of timing and things have to happen a certain way. And it's like, I'm more respectful of that, But I think it's, if there's one thing I could say to newer leaders, it's like, hey, like, stewardship is such a funny concept like that, right? Like, it's like you love it and you're working it as if it's totally yours, but you are okay at any second if the pastor just touches your hand or, your leader touches your hand, just, hey, hold on, just move over just a little bit, trust me, like the pot we're trying to make here, it should have like kind of like a bend right here. You're like, no, I want a straight pot, and you can't let go a little bit. People that get offended by that, like, you chip yourselves out of so many years of awesome ministry, right? Like, because you throw yourself off. And I say that because I thank God for God's mercy on me. There were so many times early on where I genuinely felt, I'll be honest, like really offended about all different kinds of things, right? Like, it's like they say, if you're gonna make an impact, you gotta be ready for some collisions, And I made plenty of collisions, right, with my team, with other leaders, with my own pastor, and I think to myself, I don't know how everybody put up with me, because when you're moving and shaking, sometimes you shake everybody else a little too hard, and you learn over time how to be more ginger with that, I guess. But I guess that would be the thing I say, right? Like, it's like, I think to find the Spitfire, it's true. All three of us, I'm sure we're like, I love those type of people. I want 10 more of those, right? But Spitfires that are out there, yes, we do want you. Don't be upset if you say no. We love you. Please stick around. We love you, right? Like, like, it's so true, right? But that's the type of thing I would say. And I think all of us can testify to that. Because you definitely
I do like weird ideas. I really do. Like when people come up with these bizarre ideas and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really dumb. I don't say that, but what I say is, yeah, go make that happen. You do it. And I'm behind you 100%. And if you really take the initiative, and if they do, man, we've had some kind of funky stuff that worked out so cool. And I never would have thought of it or suggested it. Yeah. But man, it was cool with these weird ideas. I like weird ideas. You never know where they're going to go. Up to a point. I hope that's understood. Do I have to clarify that?
Yeah.
Up to a point.
I'm with you. Yeah, maybe it's because we're weird idea people. So, we're like a little more, open-minded about that sometimes or whatever. And, maybe. Who knows? Yeah. But I'm with you.
That willingness to be uncomfortable is so cool, though. Seriously, like, I'll try it once.
Yeah.
I'm willing to make a fool of myself. That's not a problem. I'm willing to give it a shot and see what happens. And sometimes it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, this has been a fun hour. It looks like we are already past our hour. Well, hey, hopefully it was fun for all of you. Thank you to both of you. I definitely got some more ideas. I'm excited about this, and I think, this is going to have to be an ongoing conversation because I think these are the types of things like there's so much more to mine from these things, right? Like you were just talking about, it's like, hey, like but there's the whole just like getting kids faithful, but what do you do after that, right? How do you take kids from being faithful to being saints, right? Like working alongside you, like these are your next saints, right? These are your next bus workers. These are your next whatever, and they call it their church. Like that's a whole other thing unto itself. Um, but I think I just thought this was an interesting topic because for all of those that are starting bus ministry, I know, for the audience that we work with, a lot of them are in that situation. Like they're all starting bus ministries, and this is something if they're not dealing with right now, they're going to be dealing with in a couple months. So hopefully this helps you. All of you that are listening are going to be watching later on the replay, and that's that. So wrapping up, any final thoughts? Starting from you, Jillian.
Do we know what our webinar is next month? Is next month the one that I'm really excited about?
Yes, I'm trying to lock in Brother Ari on that. He told me a little while back that next month's webinar, assuming we get everything ironed out, will be altar working with Brother Ari Prado. I'm pretty jazzed about that.
Brother Prado is like 15 feet from me right now. He's in our evangelist quarters. He's preaching for us.
Oh, that is
he's doing a Sunday morning service for our bus kids this coming Sunday. So I am so pumped. I am excited. So we get to see it in action. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, and tell him to text me back then. Yeah.
I'll pass it on.
Yeah. I figured he was busy. I know, like the times we've like sporadically communicated, that guy's everywhere. So I'm so excited that he agreed to do this. I think this is going to be really exciting. Because that's what we're all working toward, right? Like it's like Sunday school and bus is teeing up so that these kids can get the Holy Ghost and know how real God is, like we know God is, right? Like, and I mean, like, man, like, I'll just testify again. Last time when he came over to First Church and he taught us, there was a girl that literally got the Holy Ghost, like right there. He just like showed, like, he's like, no, like this is, like, these are just things where, I mean, like he talks about like a core conviction of that. It's like, hey, like, this is the real deal. Like, everybody needs the Holy Ghost and you got to really believe that. And then he like walked through the whole thing and he just talked with us on some stuff, but it wasn't all theoretical. Like he was just like, hey, like, is there anybody here that needs the Holy Ghost? And I think, it's something that I'm looking forward to my team checking out, being able to do again. But yeah, I'm jazzed about it. So thank you for pointing that out, Jillian. Anything else you want to wrap up with as we close this on down?
One tiny little thing, we were talking about integrating the bus kids into church kids.
Mm-hmm.
We started this bus worker assistant deal where we have wake up teams typically that go out, but we're trying this, and we have 2 of them so far, kids from that street that have really made themselves available and have really made a lot of strides, where we made them a shirt that assign them bus worker assistant, and they actually wake up their street and they gather them in a group for us. And then on the bus, they help out with name tags and wristbands and stuff. So it just helps tie them in and take them to that next spot. We got 2 of them, and I want one on every single stop we have eventually. So we're trying it. We'll see how it goes. We had one for about a month, and it's been really, really cool so far.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we wanted to roll that out. So I'll definitely have to pick your brain on kind of like, how you communicated that and stuff. I really like that. That's cool. So wrapping up, thank you all for joining us. Let us know your feedback. Shoot us feedback by email, or the chat will be open for a little while after as well, even after we stop the broadcast. So connect to us through email, on the website, on any of the other channels there. And we look forward to hopping on to another one of these Kidmin office hours. If you have questions, this is an opportunity for you to be able to pick our brains. Hey, we're not like the experts in everything, but we're just wanting to make ourselves available. And if we can help, we want to. And again, Jillian and Philip, thank you. You guys help me, right? So I love these times just to get to have little jam sessions with you guys again, right?
Absolutely. I love stealing your ideas, for sure.
We are mutual thievery going on here. It's a good thing, right? So share and share alike, and we want to hear from you. As you saw there, as we're closing this down, the hope for the future is if you got things to share or you have questions to ask, that this technology actually makes it possible for us to share the stage with you, just like you see that the stage is shared with us. You'd actually be able to ask this stuff live and be able to interact with us directly on that as we answer questions in the future. So for those of you watching in the replay, there you go. That's a good incentive to check it out live, be able to hop on and have your question immortalized forever. Isn't that exciting on YouTube or whatever, right? So thank you everybody for joining us. Hope to see you in next month's webinar and any of the other upcoming events. And please let us know any event topics that you're interested in, and we'll try to line those things up as well. And so thank you again, Jillian and Philip, and good night to all. And happy kidminning. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like this video, make sure to click subscribe so that you can stay in the loop for more Kidmin tips, tricks, and ideas. See you in the next video.
Subscribe. 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 Subscribe.